In this video, you will learn how to create a simple inventory using the Ultimate Inventory System plugin developed by the ForConstruct.com team. This includes how to create inventory, how to set up its appearance, how to open and close inventory, how to set up items and add their instances to an existing inventory, and how to remove items. After you add the plugin to your project, the very first thing you need to do is to establish an inventory using Create Inventory action. This can be, for example, at the start of layout. In the actions parameters, we put the inventory's ID and set its size. The ID needs to be unique. In case you create multiple inventories with the same ID, the previously created one will be overwritten. The size of the inventory is determined by the amount of columns and rows of slots. This will define the amount of item slots and, obviously, affect visual dimensions of the inventory. Keep in mind that the Ultimate Inventory System is a global plugin. This means that every inventory is accessible from any place in the project, therefore, each inventory needs to be created only once per game. The second step is to set up how the inventory is visually presented. For this, we use Design Inventory action. Here we indicate which inventory we want to design by putting a respective inventory ID. Select an image object that will represent inventory slots. The most suitable is tiled background, alternatively 9-patch. Set the size of slots by putting width and height. This should comply with the size of the slot image we selected before. Select a text object that will be used to indicate the quantity of items stored in a slot. This is for stackable items, so those that can count more than one unit of item per slot. Additionally, you can put offset coordinates for the quantity text to adjust its position in relation to the slot to make it match your game design. The 00 coordinate is at the bottom right corner of each slot. The inventory itself is ready. Now we need to set up how the inventory is opened and closed. For this, we need to trigger Show Inventory and Hide Inventory actions. By default, every inventory is hidden. I will do it by pressing spacebar. So when the space key is pressed and the indicated inventory is shown, we trigger Hide action, where we provide the ID of the inventory we want to close. Otherwise, we will trigger Show action. In the Show Inventory action, we need to indicate inventory's ID as well, but in addition to that, we indicate the layer and coordinates where the inventory will be drawn. Note that the inventory's origin is in the top left, therefore, the hotspot or origin point of the image we use to present slots should also be top left. Okay, let's see how our inventory works. Good. Now we need items we can put in. On the start of layout, we will trigger Create Item Type action for every kind of item we want to have available in our game and can be placed in any inventory. For the purpose of this tutorial, I will create just a few item types. In first place, I will create Sword item type. In the actions properties, we need to set the type, so a string that serves as a name. We also need to select Icon, an image object, preferably sprite, that will visually represent items of that type. We can set if the items of that type are stackable by putting max stack value. This is a suitable solution for smaller items like gold, jewels, ingredients, ammunition, or some consumables. Additionally, depending on our design, we can set if the item is automatically removed from the inventory if its quantity drops to 0. The yellow potion item type will be stackable, so I set the max stack property to 10. Our sample item types are ready, therefore we can start adding items to the inventory. To do this, we need to trigger a Create Item action. For the purpose of the tutorial, I will do it by pressing dedicated buttons made of sprites. In the action parameters, we need to specify what type this item is. For stackable items, we also indicate the amount of units we want to create. In the Inventory ID field, we need to provide an ID of an existing inventory where we want the item to be placed. Optionally, we can also set which slot of the inventory we want the item to be placed in. If we leave it empty by putting a double quotation mark, the item will be automatically placed in the first empty slot. Note, by default, IDs of slots are set automatically by the plugin. In case you want to place an item in a specific slot, you will need to use dedicated plugin expressions or set a custom ID. However, this will be discussed in another tutorial. The item creation is done. Let's see how it works. So, we can open and close the inventory and add some items. Good. Now it would be nice to have a possibility to remove the items. There are actually two ways to do this: by destroying the item or reducing its quantity. Let's begin with a simpler method. To entirely rid of an item, we can use the Destroy Item action. In my case, I will do it by clicking the right mouse button. In addition, I will use a family consisting of my item sprites. Therefore, by clicking a sprite of the item should be removed. The Destroy Item action requires just one information, the item ID, so the ID of a specific item we want to remove. Same as inventory slots, the item IDs are assigned automatically by the plugin. To retrieve the item's ID, we will use dedicated inventory expressions. In my case, I will use the item ID by coordinates. This expression requires me to put the ID of the inventory where the desired item is placed, as well as the X and Y coordinates of the item sprite on the layout. In my case, I have just one inventory, so I simply put the name I have set, which is my bag. For X and Y parameters, I put the mouse pointer coordinates accordingly. Let's see how it works. Voila! The item is being removed from the game, freeing up the slot. As you can see, now the new items can appear in the empty slot. Now let's see how we can remove items by changing their quantity. This will be more suitable for games that include stackable items. For this purpose, I will use a local variable to help me retrieve an ID of the item I want to work with. In my case, I will reduce the item quantity by clicking the left mouse button. So, on button click, I make an action that sets my local variable to the ID of the item I clicked. Therefore, I will use the item ID by coordinates, same as I did before when destroying items. Then, I put an action called setItemQuantity. This action requires two parameters. First of all, we need to provide the ID of the item we want to manipulate. So I will use my local variable, which already stores the ID I need. The second parameter is quantity. Obviously, I can set any number I want, but the idea is to reduce the current amount by 1. Therefore, I will use another expression of the plugin, which is itemQuantity. This expression needs an item ID, so I put my local variable as a parameter of that expression, and in addition, I simply put -1. And now, by clicking an item in the inventory, the amount of items in a slot is reduced by 1. Because every item type is set to be destroyed when the quantity drops to 0, they get automatically removed. This way, thanks to the Ultimate Inventory System plugin, we have created an inventory which has desired dimensions, appearance and amount of slots, can easily be opened and closed, can store defined items automatically assigned to the first spare slot, has a possibility to easily remove stored items. Check out other tutorials dedicated for the Ultimate Inventory System plugin to learn, in example, how to easily implement a possibility to drag items between slots and other inventories, or how to use custom inventory features to create equipment slots or a crafting panel. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and select a solid bell icon to be sure you are notified when new tutorials appear.